Hey everybody, welcome to The Quick Draw. It's me again, your host, Mike. With me, my co-host, John. Both of us are the Ordinary Young Guns. We got a fun show today. We're going to take a little break. Well, not quite a break from politics. We don't ever take a break from politics. It's actually really
I've tried.
It doesn't work. It's funny because I don't have an off switch. I'm always talking about politics. I mean, talking with my wife, talking with you should see Sunday dinners. Sunday dinners can get very interesting with me and my family. But we are going to take kind of a break. We're gonna have a fun artsy fartsy show today. So with us to have some fun is a pretty thing to talk about pretty things. She's also very smart, very well written. If you don't know her, let me introduce you to at Hyacinth Girl. We're aka April. April, welcome to the program.
Hi.
So April's got a blog that she's written some really cool stuff about art and art history. And we got to having a really fun and interesting conversation about art after I wrote an article for Halsey News about kind of the death of art and how conservatives, we kind of have this this practical approach, I guess you could call it, to art, where it almost feels like we're too busy for the finer things in life, if you will. And April, you had some really interesting comments or some thoughts on that, and I was hoping you'd be able to share those real quick.
Well, I think with it's not for me, I don't get the impression that we don't have time for it. It's that a lot of people they just look at art and think, these people don't want me around anyway. Nobody shares the same viewpoint. And if who wants to go look at a crucifix dipped in urine?
Right.
Honestly. And then I think in that respect, conservatives have really checked out of, I don't want to say high culture because that sounds really, really pretentious. So just art, and I mean, we go to movies and we get upset about movies and stuff and everything. Okay. Everybody's upset about movies and TV shows or whatever. But as far as art goes, I feel like there's just not a huge presence, not of conservative artists, but just of conservative art appreciators. They just don't.
Right. And
care.
I think, like you said, it has a lot to do. I'm really not sure exactly when that happened, because now we just know that the way art is nowadays, it just hates people like us anyway.
I'm going to say my theory, and I have nothing to back this up with, but I don't have any hard data in front of me, but I would say probably in the 60s when the whole cultural, that whole kind of cultural revolution thing happened. And then so many people, I mean, just talking to my mom was 19 in 1969. Mm-hmm. Just talking to her, she's always been conservative. My dad's always been conservative. And they just kind of checked out of it because they were it just disgusted them. And and she talked about the unrest and stuff that was going on.
Right.
And they were just completely turned off by it. And I think a lot of people were,
And I think that, because at this point, I think art, and you mentioned it in the articles I read that you wrote. Apparently there was a third one that I didn't read, but oh well.
It's okay.
I liked the second one. I really loved how it ended. But the thing is that it is kind of at this point, the Jacques Derrida type of feel to it, where it's deconstruction. The goal is take everything that Western sensibilities think are good and completely just trash it. Just trash everything.
Oh,
That's what Piss Christ was. It was just an attempt to say Christianity is a part of Western civilization, so we hate it. We're going to just
literally piss on it.
Yeah. And
everybody uses the Piss Christ as an example, but it's a great example of just.
Yeah, it's symbolic of literally the entire postmodern art movement, basically.
Yeah.
So and it's part of that the whole Marxist, and again, it is, here anyone think, oh, you're being conspiratorial. It's Marxism, but yes, it is. It's basically
it's the conflict theory, the post-Marxist, the Yeah, just like with the conflict theory. I just read
Well,
about
yeah. So, and that's just something that I've discussed too. Is that you have this. So, because the whole premise of Marxism is this idea of the superstructure, right? And then we always keep coming back to this because I honestly feel like that's what's going on in America. Is it's Marxism versus freedom,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And that was one of the things I loved about your article when you talked about how freedom, like real freedom, creates that atmosphere and that environment where you can actually have art and expression and creative thought. You don't have that in a feudalistic society. You don't have that. I mean, you do. I mean, art has existed since the caveman days,
Mhm.
right? But where it's really flourished is under societies where people are free to pursue their own interests and do what they want to do. And then when and as they become prosperous and have free time, you know, there are always going to be people who want to see beautiful things. There's always going to be people that want to surround themselves with beauty, right? And the freer people are to pursue those things, and the more prosperous people are, the better they're going to have those things. Well, Marxism comes in and says, no, you guys can't do that. That's oppressive. That's bad. You can't enjoy it. You can't have nice things. And so it's about destroying everything that is good about Western civilization, because once you destroy everything that's good, then you can point to all the things that are not ideal or are bad and say, see, capitalism sucks. You need to overthrow it and replace it with this other system that doesn't work.
And of course,
and that's totally oppressive and no fun.
And you related it to the whole Me Too thing, which I find some actual irony in the fact that, like you said, it's kind of odd how feminism went from the burn your bra, sexuality for everybody, women should be all over, to this really Victorian kind of anti-sex, you know.
Oh, there's actually like Camille Paglia is one of my heroes. I just love her so much. And she talks about that the anti-sex feminism and how it's really like taken over. And so you end up with these like, you know, I just remember, do you remember John Ashcroft? Remember when he was in that, you know, he was giving a speech and they were like, oh, he had to cover up the statues because they were naked and it was too embarrassing for him or whatever.
Which is exactly what they're doing now.
like you want it to cover up like all of the, I mean, okay, that was a tangent. I almost did it, but I'm not going to do it right now.
Right.
This is a very ADD show, April. You are more than welcome to go on off whatever tangents you want.
I'm ADD, so, you know, but like,
guilty.
There's this whole, it's this whole Victorian mindset where, and that's, I mean, you have feminists pushing like separate train cars for women and the same kind of stuff that's going on in Saudi Arabia, you know, going on like, oh, well, we should wear burkinis so that we're safe from male gaze. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
right.
Not how it works, because they're the same people that are telling me that, you know, we should cover up so we could be safe from the male gaze are the same people that are like, well, it doesn't matter what you wore if you got raped or you say you know, and it's like she could be standing, you know, they're the same ones that are like taking their shirts off and saying, you know, having slut walks and stuff.
Right. Yeah, that was what I was going to mention. That's like, wait, you're mixed signals now all of a sudden.
Yeah, I don't understand you. Like, I think maybe you guys are confused.
Well, plus you have to remember that the West, again, the art of Western civilization is also, you know, of course we have to remember that also Western civilization is apparently the sole territory of you white devils. And so, you know, that it's supposed to be that, like, I am supposed to hate it because, you know, I'm black and, oh my God, it's all white people stuff. And apparently anything with white people in it is supposed to be, like, somehow attacking black people or whatever. And you know, that's another thing is that, well, Western art just isn't diverse enough. You know, we want to look at the art from other people besides Europeans. And it's like, first of all, not all those people have been considered white. It's been changed over the last century. Plus, it's just, it speaks to this idea that the left is actually kind of shifting to this point where it's almost like the natural logical conclusion is exactly the thing that they say they're against, which is what the ethno-nationalists do. I know they're called the alt-right. Stupid, but that's the basic thing: is everyone has to be, you have to cut and slice everybody according to groups.
Oh yeah.
That everyone is supposed to be at each other's throats, and everyone should be separate. You know, again, it's like the whole girl with the Chinese dress that we're supposed to say
Oh my
is
gosh.
a racist. It's cultural appropriation, which is weird because, like, I eat curry. I'm curious to know whether I'm I'm curious to know whether I'm appropriating anything. I think only white people can do that. So
I think so. I think that we're the only ones who can. I think I was talking to somebody, I was talking to people today on Twitter about Cinco de Drinko today. And I was like, you know, somebody, I think his name's Alfred, like he made a really good point about how with St. Patrick's Day, the Irish were marginalized and despised, and then everybody started drinking on St. Patrick's Day, and everybody, you know, they're like, everybody's Irish, and now, you know, you don't even think about the Irish as a separate,
right.
You know, people, you know, and he's like, oh, I would hate for that to happen, you know, with Cinco de Mayo, you know, that would just be terrible, you know, and like, fantastic, but he was just like,
it's almost like they're, and some might say this is by design, but it's almost like their goal is to keep those divisions and to separate individuals and to keep that melting pot from ever happening.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, that's a perfect example. You know, the Irish used to be treated like black people.
Yeah.
Like you would have signs that would say things like "No Negroes or Irish allowed." Like literally, those two things were conflated.
I've met a lot of people, and they're really not that bad, you know.
But that's, I mean, that's.
I've met.
At some point, we're like, okay, the Irish, whatever, you know, they get drunk like we do. That's cool. Well, I mean, not like me, but.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say,
like John does on occasion.
I'm a lightweight. I couldn't get drunk like any Irish person.
But they, you know, those divisions don't exist anymore, at least between Americans and those of Irish descent. Why? Well, because at some point we just decided to be cool and get drunk.
Yeah.
Like now we can't do that with, and that's what Cinco de Mayo is. It's Mexican St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an excuse to get drunk and wear like stereotypical memorabilia. And they're saying, no, you can't do this because we have to remember that those people, those brown people, are different. You can't accept them into our society because they're different. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought we were the racist ones.
That's it though, because it's not for the most part, it's not people of Mexican descent that are getting upset about this. It's these white allies that are like, I'm getting upset for this person, and like these people are like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just gonna go do it with my friends, you know.
I heard about the whole Chinese prom dress thing when they talked to people in China, and the people in China were like, that's a good thing, right? I mean, they love our culture. Isn't that a good thing? No, it's the white leftists running around. No, it's terrible, and you need to be offended. And the Chinese are like, what's wrong with you? It's like, it's perfectly fine. But no, and that's just.
The whole thing I found amusing about that too, because I lived in Utah for a number of years because I went to college there, and as soon as I saw those girls from Utah, I was like, okay, look, guys, she gets a pass. She probably has never even met a minority in her life. Like, give her a break. Come on, these aren't malicious people. This is like, she saw a dress, she thought it was pretty. Case closed. Like, there's no. Because we would get asked really dumb questions when my wife and I were in Utah. Like my wife would get asked, because my wife's from Chile, and we get asked questions like, "So is that like where in Mexico is that?" And we're just like, look at a map, or do you guys? Are there trees in Chile? I mean, there is a desert like in a little part of it up north, but come on.
I don't even understand that because there's some questions that at least I think, okay, they're understandable. Then some that are like, what?
Well, I told you the story. I told you the story about. So I had a friend in college from New York. He's black. Great guy named Reggie. Like, which is the whitest name ever for a black person. It's Reginald.
Oh, that's really cool.
But So, but we're both from the East Coast, so we're like reminiscing and we're bantering back and forth. This is shortly after I like first met him, and we just became really good friends because of the whole East Coast thing. And we're both raised Mormon, but Utah was a huge culture shock for us. Like, and I mean a huge culture shock for us. and so we're talking and we're bantering back and forth, and we're talking about home and our families, and he's telling me about and all these like white people are like listening in. These white Utah boys and girls are like because they've never seen a black person, I think, and he's telling me about his family, and he's like, yeah, my mom is Haitian and my dad is African American, Black American, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And people are like, why is that interesting? And I'm like, well, because they usually don't get along. Like Haitians and American blacks don't usually get along. And this is me growing up in Florida. Like I knew this growing up in Florida, where there's a lot of Haitians, and also blacks. And people are, they're kind of confused, like, why wouldn't they get along? Like they're both, yeah, right? they're like, oh, I'm sure. And I'm just like, and my friend looks at me and he's kind of nodding, like, he goes, oh, you're right, yeah, I know, it's a little different. And so somebody finally asked the question, like everyone was afraid to ask. And so somebody gets up the nerve to ask me, or I actually asked him, but I spoke up. I white explained it for him. So they asked him, like, wait, why wouldn't Haitians and Black Americans get along? And he's like, as he's pondering how to answer that, I just say, because Haitians work. And and you can see the color just drain from everyone's faces, and they're like, it's like I pulled the pin off a grenade, and everyone's just like running for the door. and my friend Reggie, his jaw just dropped, and then he just laughs, and everyone's looking at me, and they look at him, and they look at me, and they're like, wait, he's not mad. And then and their expression was just like, I can't believe you just said that. And my friend's like, I can't believe you just said that, but it's true. So he just
right. No, because actually, I'm laughing now because again, the second time hearing this, because Mike seems to have a great track record for the same type of friends, because I'm almost exactly the same.
I have a type.
From New York, black. My dad is Ugandan and my mom is Black American. So
and it's the same dynamic.
Problem.
It's the same dynamic.
Is Africans and Black Americans don't get along, and I hear the same question often. Why not? They're both black. Not the point. It was like, have you been to Africa? It's like that might explain it, but no, of course not. But which is funny because the most ignorant people about Africa usually are Black Americans, actually.
Eddie Murphy had some interesting. he was pretty.
But and I know I'm backtracking now, so I feel like we're doing something useful. But just talking about the whole art thing. I think it's a part of a campaign. I think basically is the idea that everything about Western civilization has to be overturned because supposedly it's racist or it's sexist or because like you said in your articles about how they have to cover up the nymphs and the one picture.
Oh yeah.
Not well, and it's like
they were talking about how the nymphs looked prepubescent, and I'm like, they're
nymphs.
Might have been.
They're supposed to look like maidens.
Yeah, like they live in the water. I don't know. Like, what are they supposed to look like? And, are they supposed to look? Are they supposed to have like consent forms or whatever? Like I don't understand. But like,
well, no, and that's an interesting kind of topic too. That the left again, that whole anti-sex left. It's like there's this push to have people be more and more sexually active, but like way later in life. Like they want them celibate until they're too old to have kids. Yeah. And really almost too old to kind of enjoy sex. Like I got married when I was 24. Yeah. And my wife and I were both abstinent till we were married. So it was a bit of a learning process for us. But we were both, because of that, we were both young enough to where, we didn't have any expectations as far as like what sex was supposed to be like or how good it was supposed to be or anything like that. Like, we kind of, it was like blind people fumbling through the dark. Like we figured it out. I mean, over time, and now we're at a point. But I'm only 34, and you know, there are people my age now who are just now thinking of like marriage and settling down with one person, which is where I think, you know, sexual activity becomes really intimate and really enjoyable, right? And
there's this whole hookup culture too, though, where it's like all through your 20s, you're supposed to be, I mean, I got married at 23. I was pregnant, so I knew what I was doing. But like, I like there's this whole hookup culture. Like now, like your 20s is now your adolescence, you know?
Yeah.
And like, it's just, and I don't understand. I honestly don't understand it, because you're supposed to have all these meaningless encounters. And then you're supposed to decide that you want to get married, like in your.
Well, there was an article recently. I forget where it was written, but it was supposedly saying that you should sleep with at least 25 people before.
Oh yeah,
and I think
so sad.
And I think that basically what the left is doing is actually, I think there's two separate things, two separate fronts. So they're pushing marriage as late as possible, if at all, and they're pushing sex as early as possible. I mean, to the point where they want to give sex ed to like 4-year-olds, you know, in the name of transgenderism. Usually, it used to be in the name of AIDS awareness. Now it's always in the name of something. The point is, somehow,
for the children,
for some reason, we have to teach small children about sex, and so they're supposed to start having sex. You know, because look at the fact that over the years, you know how there's always an age where parents have kind of gotten to the point where they'll say they don't think the kid should be having sex, but they're going to do it anyway. And that age has just gotten younger and younger over time, because it used to be like 17 and then it was like 14. And then I remember when I was like a teenager where there was like these girls, like I think it was like Massachusetts or something, where they were like 11 and they were having sex, and they were like, they're going to do it anyway. So they're 11. It's just like, what? But that age has just steadily dropped over time. And I think that's been the goal.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, it's to be able to say you should divorce sex from marriage. Marriage and sex should not be a related thing. In fact, marriage should be something that's looked down upon.
But I wonder how that ties. I'm kind of curious how that ties to like the whole the nymph painting, and there's kind of like this this aversion to it because the nymphs are so young. I mean, because you bring up a great point, John. These are the same people that tell us that no, kids should be learning about anal sex when they're 12, and they should be, they're, at 11 they're old enough to know which gender they identify. Like, these are people who don't have a problem indoctrinating kids into sexual deviancy, or sexuality of any kind. But so where is that connection between, we want kids to be as sexually active as possible. We don't like this painting because the nymphs look a little too young. I wonder if the issue is not the youthfulness of the nymphs, but almost kind of the innocence of it all.
Right.
I was thinking, since they did initially throw out in that in the Waterhouse thing in Manchester, they kind of threw out the Me Too thing, like kind of, oh yeah, also Me Too. And I was kind of thinking that like that is the idea of Waterhouse was a white male, and therefore he would be painting these young women because, in the Me Too age, all men are pigs. All men.
Right. And that's important.
All men are predators.
Yeah, they're all predators. And so this is not sexual, because it's obviously not, because like, I think I'm trying to remember my Greek myths now. I feel bad. See, I'm not prepared. But I think they kill him. I think they kill Hylas. So it was
like the first snuff porn.
I guess it's one way of looking at it.
I love the painting. Waterhouse is one of my favorites, and I love him. And
no, and I've never seen that painting prior to your article, and I love that painting. It's there's lots of detail. Just the skill is really good.
My screensaver, but like It's like his whole like catalog on this Shakespearean, and that was the I think I made that point in the article, in one of the articles, where you know, the Pre-Raphaelites themselves just painted they painted myths and Greek myths, Roman myths, Shakespearean, like series scenes from Shakespeare. There's the Lady of Shalott, which is not Shakespearean, but there's several pictures of Ophelia by different painters from that school. And
so they were almost like the, you know, because this is before movies, right? They're almost like the blockbuster movie of their day.
I guess they really were pushing back against what they deemed too structured, like painting with the styles were too structured, not necessarily because they were in the 1800s and early 1900s, but they like after they didn't like what happened with I think it was medieval art, where they didn't like the structured, unnatural, like ultra, like it was almost, some of these paintings were almost like they were like HD, you know, like they were so detailed and so unnatural, and everybody's like posing with all these little cherubs floating around them or whatever. And they didn't like that. And so that was what they were pushing back against, which I thought was really, and I thought that was really significant as well, that a school that really believed in preserving the Western civilization, like the way that they saw it, like just preserving it. I mean, with Shakespeare and Greek myths and all these references, they then in Manchester, they're like, no, you're not allowed to be out. Like, we're gonna hide you away because you're problematic now. And I thought that was, I don't know if it was intentional, but I thought it was kind of ironic. The school itself was trying to preserve Western civilization, right, and the way things were done. And so I think that it's just, I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that.
Squirrel!
Well, still, I think though that, again, it's all just part of a push. And unfortunately, it's kind of funny because it's a little mixed in terms of what's being expected. Because again, you have this mixed signal about sexuality for everybody, yet not, you know. And so, you know, and then we're, you know, the art is supposed to be, I mean, like, not to mention literally, again, we're the I guess it's postmodern art, not really modern art.
Yeah.
Modern art, I think, was just dumb. But like this postmodern art, I think, is to the point where it's on the attack. It's to say, find every possible thing and just attack it, everything. Yeah. I mean, not just Christianity, because again, yes, Piss Christ was in fact symbolic of the whole thing. But then you also just where the definitions of what constitutes art are loosened, and I think they're loosened on purpose, yes, in order to make sure that all the standards for what we consider art get thrown out.
And yeah, I think the trend is, and this is a bit of my faith kind of bias, but I wonder if the trend here is making sure nobody can enjoy anything. Yeah. And the reason I bring up faith is because in my faith, you know, our depiction of God, the ultimate good, and Satan, the ultimate evil, is God wants everybody to be happy and live their lives and enjoy their lives, and he has it. You know, he establishes a plan so everyone can be happy in spite of all the crap that happens in life, or maybe because of it in some ways. And Satan is someone who wants everybody to be miserable because he's miserable. And it almost feels like if that's your paradigm or that's your world, to me it almost seems like that makes leftism kind of satanic, because right. what it is it wants everybody to be miserable. It's like, oh, you like that art? No, you can't enjoy that art because it's too sexual. Oh, you like this art? You can't like that art because it's too puritanical. It's like, well, what the fuck can I enjoy? Well, here's this thing that makes fun of your religious beliefs. I enjoy that.
Yeah, or just have this wall with like these paint splatters on it, and then like some
that a 3-year-old could do.
Yeah, like
right.
ugh.
Well, and that's why we've reached that age where we've gotten to the point where you can mistake just random things for art. Like I still remember that old story about some guy who left his glasses in the corner of an art gallery and people thought it was an exhibit. I mean, we've reached that point now where you can mistake random things for art. I still remember there was a story from back when I was in high school, and it's why ever since I heard it, I was like, I just hate dealing with modern art, because it was a story about some guy who played a prank where they were having like a plumbing redone in their gallery, and so the guy who was doing the plumbing work left the schematic for what he was doing overnight. So I guess a guy, as a prank, decided he framed it and he put the schematic in an exhibit, and a guy bought it for like 30 grand because
Oh, wow.
he was like, he's just like, oh, it's such a great depiction of our modern digital age or something like that. And it's like, see, this is where I have a problem, and this is where I think the left is trying to go with this, is that we're to the point now where the definition of art is so completely skewed. We
Mm,
don't even know what to call art anymore, because everything is art, therefore nothing is art.
yeah.
because when you can consider just a random piece of paper thrown in anything art, well, nothing really is then, is it? You know?
Yeah.
Which, go ahead, April.
No, I'm just thinking about it because,
So,
like, on one hand, I think that art doesn't have to be beautiful, but at the same time, like, I think that there's just so much stupidity out there that's trying to be passed off as art. You know, that's just so, I mean, it's like, did you even try? Like,
Right.
did you even think about this before you, like, you know, threw up on that or whatever? You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would argue that, at least for me, art requires some level of skill to do. If it didn't take any thought or skill to do, it's not art. At least that's what I think.
There's
And, you know,
this whole school's dedicated to it. You know, there's actual art schools. So
it also helps if you're not like certifiably crazy,
yeah,
because like there's like that one I saw they call performance art, which I'm sorry, I think the term is meaningless at this point. I think it always was. But like for instance, there was one where, I am not kidding you. So this woman decides to basically fill a bunch of eggs with paint, and then she stuffed like a bunch of those eggs up her vagina,
ew.
and then goes in public, no less, stands over a big canvas and just like plops them out onto the canvas. And apparently that was art. And I'm just like, see.
good night, everybody. We're going to end the show on that note.
No, but yeah, that was the thing.
Right. On a bicycle.
Yeah, that was a thing. And so I'm just like, okay, when that's what you call art, you don't deserve to be in charge of getting to decide what art is.
Well, no, okay, so I mean that, and that's as good an example of any as I think why conservatives are kind of abandoning the art space. And, I mean, any sane person, which you have to be sane to be conservative. I think that's a prerequisite,
right?
Or at the very least, you have to be insane to be not a conservative. I look at things like that and I said, okay, any sane person's gonna hear that story and go, "What the hell?" Like I can't wrap my brain around that. I'm sorry, that's not something that I would ever think. That's a really interesting way. Like there's nothing. There's no value there. There's no social value to that form of expression. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I understand why conservatives now are like fleeing in droves to get away from that.
Yeah.
How do you get conservatives then back into the art space? Because one of the big complaints from conservatives is how the left controls the media, how the left controls pop culture, which I want to get to that in a second, because I differ from conservatives, I think, a lot when it comes to pop culture. But how do we get conservatives, back into the art space? How do we get conservative artists, and how do we get conservative singers and poets and writers again? Because it feels like it's just an ever increasingly narrow niche of people that can be considered conservative who are also artists. And also, to be quite honest, some of the stuff we're putting out is just garbage.
I was gonna say it reminds me of like, so my dad was a pastor, he was a Baptist pastor, and he never made us, like, I knew other kids that were pastors' kids and they could only listen to Christian music or whatever. And so my dad was like, I can't do that to you.
Oh, dear God, no.
I can't. Okay, I love music of all kinds. About the only thing I won't listen to is country music and Christian rock. I cannot stand. And it's funny because even if it's a good band, there's something about it. Just knowing that it's Christian makes me go, I don't want to listen to this anymore. Yeah. Like Skillet. Skillet's a great band. I love Skillet. They have good songs. And if you didn't know they were Christian rock, you'd listen and you think, this is a wholesome message, or this is a love song. You know, this is kind of edgy, whatever. But then I found out they're Christian rock, and I was like, oh, no. All of a sudden I'm like having this urge to not like them because it's like, what?
It's so lame.
Well, it's just that, to me, it's the idea of, okay, what's Christian about it? Like, what makes Christian rock different than other rock, unless it's being purposely didactic and preachy?
Exactly.
Right. And the thing about Skillet is, before I knew it was Christian rock, I just listened to it and I listened to the lyrics and I thought, this is a great universal message that anyone could enjoy. But the moment they start branding themselves as Christian rock, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this anymore, because now you're shoving things down my throat.
Well, partially, this isn't the cynical part of me. Partially, it's a moneymaker. I mean, if you say I'm Christian and I'm for, you have a niche then, and then you have an audience that's going to be like, oh, you're a Christian? Okay, we're going to buy your music, you know, or whatever. But then there's also, like, I don't know, like,
well, there's some truth to that.
Legend people with it, you know.
Well, it's like what's that movie that came out with Kevin Sorbo? God's Not Dead. Like, it's such a trashy film. Like, and a lot of those films are like that. It's overly preachy. All the atheists are straw men. Like, they're angry at God and they hate God. And it's like, okay, this is preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
And it's not even good preaching to the choir. It's not even good preaching to the choir. I'm okay with preaching to the choir if it's artful and artistic and is entertaining. This is none of those things. This is like, it's what's the term you use?
Me?
John? No, it's the auto-flagellating self-fellatio or something like that.
Self-flagellating auto-fellatio.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, as poor persecuted Christians, oh, we're so awesome. Oh.
Right. And so, but I think there's some truth to what you're saying, because I was watching a video, and again, I will not generally watch any videos critiquing Christian media unless it's from a Christian, because honestly, the rest is irritating. Yeah. But there was a Christian guy on YouTube who was explaining what's wrong with a lot of Christian movies, for instance. And
I think I shared that on the
right.
The
what he
like,
now
really
one of the things he pointed out is, he talked about how, for instance, the artistic, just like the little things like camera angles and the way that things are done are not done right, because most of the people who do those movies are pastors, not filmmakers. And
I know exactly what video you're talking about.
And he said it's not a budget thing. It's not a budget thing, because if you look at a lot of these movies, you think they were low budget, but they're not. If you look at them, actually they have massive budgets. Christians, if you take a movie and call it Christian, Christians will pay money to see it. And there are a lot of Christians, which means you're going to get a lot of money out of it. And they do. The problem is that they're made by people who are trying to preach, not trying to make a movie.
The exact thing he said that I really liked is, he's like, these are not movies. They're sermons. They're 2-hour-long visual sermons. And they're meant to sermonize to a group of people. They're not meant to entertain. They're not meant to enlighten. It's preachy, and and I'm a very religious person. Like, I do those Sunday threads every week, because I like to take a break from politics and I like to talk about faith and spirituality. So it's not that I don't like these things because I don't believe in God or I'm not a faithful person. It's because I don't, even as faithful as I am, I don't like being preached to. Yeah, I don't like people getting in my face and saying, "Repent, sinners! You need to be saved, or you're going to go to hell."
Plus, it's also something Glenn Beck mentioned years ago, and I think he's right. The other problem is that movies are risky. As a general rule, like I hear a lot of people say all the time that, well, leftists like to make movies, because they just like to make money. No, actually, for leftists, the message is more important than the money because
Right.
they are willing to make movies that bomb at the box office, and they make them anyway because they want the message to get out. Conservatives, and Glenn Beck talked about how when you find conservatives with deep pockets, the first thing they want to know, what's the return on investment? If you can't tell me for sure that I'm making it back, I don't want to fund it. Well, movies by nature are risky. And so they tend not to want to fund big movies because they're a risk. Leftists are willing to plop down millions of dollars and expect to probably lose it all to get a message out. Conservatives oftentimes don't do that. And I think that's a big problem. Glenn said it was, and I agree with him that I think that's the problem. Big, rich conservatives will not spend and risk money on making big studio movies.
Well, we had that same conversation with Sonny Bunch when he was on the show a while back. Like, you have those movies that artists will do because they want to make money, like the Avengers, right? That's a cash cow.
Superhero movies are pretty safe.
Superhero movies. They don't have any artistic value, but obviously it's more about making money than art. Like, it's a very lowbrow form of art.
Although Infinity War was on.
But then you have, shut up, I haven't seen it. And then
I haven't even seen this one.
I swear to God, if you guys do spoilers, I'm gonna fucking cut you.
I haven't seen it.
But then you have the people that do things because they want Academy Awards, they want the Oscars, they want the artistic recognition of their work.
That was a bit in Arrested Development with Thomas Jane. There was like a couple episode arc where Thomas Jane was in Arrested Development, and he was playing a homeless guy because he knew he had one movie that was his passion project, and it was about, shooting heroin, and the other one was like about, a comedy about getting his kids back. Like, and so he was like doing them at the same time because he was like, he knew the studio wanted something that would like make money, but then he was like, shooting for an Oscar with the other one. It was.
And there are times when you can do both. There are films that have. I don't think there needs to be this dichotomy between making money and being artistic. There are artful films. I think I'm trying to think of one that are artistic in the sense that you watch them, and I'll give you a good one. Collateral Beauty. Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh my God, that is a great film.
I never get to watch TV or movies.
I can go over it with you if you want, or if you don't want me to spoil it, and just go watch it.
Not spoilers. I don't care.
Okay, so it's a great movie. It almost had a very Shakespearean quality to it. It stars Will Smith. He plays this man who lost his daughter to this really rare disease, and he used to be this very successful marketing president. And then he runs this company with his 3 partners, and then his daughter dies, and he completely shuts down. His wife and he are separated. His business is about to go under. Nobody can reach him. His clients are all about to leave him. And it starts with this opening monologue by him when he's happy and everything's great in life about how everyone wants more time, more love, and they fear death. Well, his partners, to try to rescue him, to snap him out of it, they decide to gaslight him by hiring these actors to pretend to be the living embodiment of love, time, and death. And they pretend like he's the only one who can see them, and they talk to him as if they are time, love, and death. And they snap him out of it. And there's these great monologues about love and these great monologues about time and death. And it's very introspective, but it's also very entertaining. And where it gets interesting is, yeah, they snap Will Smith's character out of his funk, but at the same time, his partners are also going through these life things. And their interaction with these actors are helping them grow and develop. Great film, very entertaining film. Also, in my opinion, very artistic. You listen to these monologues and you're just like, wow, that's like really deep. And then it turns out they actually are the actors. What we think are the actors this whole movie, they actually are love, death, and time. They actually are supernatural embodiments of these concepts. They throw that twist in there. So just like it was a fun movie. I loved it. So I don't think you have to have these kind of this dichotomy between making money and being artful. You can do both.
Right, but it's not easy, and again, it's still a risk.
It takes effort. It takes skill, and we are a society now, and I think this ties into a little bit too, like with our obsession with celebrity, is we would much rather make lots of money doing nothing. We want to sit on our asses and get rich and famous, and it's like that's not how it works, guys. Society.
Why do you think I want to be a hacker? Why do you think I want to be a hacker? That's
just steal $1 from everybody and become super rich overnight.
No, that was out very well for them on Office Space. Have you guys seen that movie?
Yes. Anyone who's ever had a job should see that movie.
Because I know people who have office jobs and they're like, don't fucking turn that movie on. I hate that movie. Like, oh my God. Like, I am Michael Bolton. You know? And anytime anybody says hackers, though, I always think of the movie Hackers.
I love that movie. It's such a guilty pleasure. It's such a good movie.
Yeah. It's probably less of a guilty pleasure, though, for people who actually know anything about hacking.
Oh, come on. Here's the thing. I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the movie Limitless?
Is that the one with
no.
Yeah, with the pill that makes him smarter.
Yeah, I've watched like the series of it, but not.
Okay, so yeah, I was gonna segue that to the series. So they made a series about it, and I really liked it. It only lasted a season, which is disappointing. But there's an episode where he teaches himself how to hack while he's on the super smart pill, and he's like, and he goes into this like brief monologue about, just so you guys know, hacking is really boring. It's nowhere near as exciting as they make it in the movies.
This is very true. It's absolutely
right. That's why they don't make movies like accurately about it. Because
yeah, you're right.
This guy said, you know, he's like, it's the middle of the night, or it's 3 a.m, and like he's got like 25 empty monster cans next to him, and like.
Let me put it this way. It's not even that. The part you're talking about where you do all the typing, it's not even that. It's type command, wait for about 6 hours for the thing to finish doing what it's doing. And that's if it's short. 6 hours is short.
Yeah.
Wait for like 2 days for the thing to finish doing what it's doing. That's basically what modern hacking is. It's start a program.
A lot of the people I grew up with, a lot of my guy friends from when I was growing up were into computers, because it was like, you know, the mid 90s, like, and it was like we were starting to all get emails and stuff, and like so yeah, I've been in a lot of like we go to DEF CON like almost every year. So like
yeah. And if you know, do you know the site cracked.com?
Yes.
There's a couple of articles there I love on this. It was like 5 or 6 things Hollywood thinks computers can do, and another one where it's like six ways that you could tell Hollywood doesn't understand technology. Those are priceless. Absolutely priceless, because it is funny how the portrayal. Because again, there's a show that I absolutely love. It's my favorite show on TV, 24. But the way that they do their computer work is absolutely just not even close to realistic. But it's actually something that's become lovable about the show, because you find out that the guys who made the show did that on purpose. Like after a while, they just literally did it on purpose. Like they were purposely just techno-babbling their way through the whole thing.
So Star Trek.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Star Trek with terrorists. They're Star Trek with terrorists.
Yep. Star Trek Deep Space Nine specifically purposely just techno-babbled. In fact, that was their book. Yep. It was probably the best one.
There's really a comment in the live chat by Maniacal Off-Road. It's quantity over quality, and that goes for just about everything. I like trucks and cars, and it's the same thing with there with art. They don't make beautiful, good quality trucks anymore. I think that's a really good point, actually. We are such a consumeristic society, and we want things now. We want them cheap. We want them, it's this instant gratification thing, and that's one of the, I know, John, you're a big Japanophile, and probably more than I am. But I do love, especially like Meiji era Japanese culture. And one of the things that has always fascinated me about Japanese culture, especially feudalistic Japan, is they very much had, for a long time, for centuries, ingrained in their culture this idea of doing things the hard way and doing things to the utmost zenith. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you do. You want to push yourself to the ideal, which is very similar to the classical Greeks, right? The classical Greeks had the same concept. Like, there is this ideal, and maybe we don't know what it is, and maybe we can't obtain it in this life, but we should always strive for it just because. Like, there was, it was perfection for the sake of perfection,
right?
And we don't have that. We don't have that in our society.
You see that in like the Japanese swords, like
I have some of those.
Oh my gosh, like it's just amazing.
And that's a perfect example, because, and this is where I get a little nerdy here. Japanese swords aren't really that great. I mean, we depict them in media as like these things like you swish once and then afterwards like the candle falls over and things like that. Yeah, it's what makes the reason why Japanese swords stand out. I mean, there was a period of time where they were very high quality, but the reason why Japanese swords really stand out is their artistic value. Mm-hmm. They intersected art with utility. They didn't just make a sword that worked in battle. They made a sword that looks gorgeous. Like, you look like a badass while you're riding into battle with it.
And
it does the job. I mean, they're good weapons.
There's a channel on YouTube I watch about that. There's the whole truth about katanas. There's a whole series on that. If you're willing to sit for like 4 hours and watch that, which I watched half of it so far.
So that's one of the things I would like to do, because this is my engineering background coming into play. I would love to use modern metallurgical technology and processes and combine them with like Japanese sword making. So I basically make a Japanese sword that is as beautiful and intricate as what we see, in ancient Japanese swordsmanship, but is every bit as practical and actually durable and strong as modern media and pop culture kind of portrays them. So speaking of pop culture, because I want to talk about that a little bit.
Can I make a quick?
Go ahead.
My husband makes knives, and what all the stuff we're talking about right now is all the stuff that he talks to me about all the time. Like when I'm just he's like talking at me about like metallurgy and stuff, and he uses like different etching and stuff. So I just want to put that out there.
So I love stuff like that. It's fascinating what you can do to make a blade keen.
His web address.
Damascus steel is definitely the way to go.
It's really amazing stuff. I don't have it with me. I usually have a knife with me, but I don't have it with me. But I'll post that.
So going back to pop culture, because I did want to bring that up before we end the show. There are some conservatives, and I don't know how prevalent this is, but whenever it's brought up, I'm always the one guy that disagrees, and everyone else is like jumping down my throat. So we'll see how you guys react and how the live chat reacts. But anytime it comes up, it seems like there's this push. We got to get pop culture. We have to take back pop culture. We need more conservatives in pop culture. And my problem with this has always been two things. One, it always seems like the people pushing that line are conservatives that want to sell books or movies or audio tapes or tickets to the comedy show. It's never people that are just saying it for like a purely principled philosophical reason. They're just like, we need to take back pop culture. And by the way, buy my rap CD or buy my book. And it's like, that doesn't strike me as genuine, guys. But the other problem I have with it is, look at what pop culture is today, right? Mm-hmm. It's the Kardashians. It's, Jersey Shores and reality TV and all this garbage. And I feel like I want to get your guys' thoughts, because in my mind, going after pop culture is a waste of time, because it's a race to the bottom anyway. It's always a race to the bottom. Pop culture always appeals to the least common denominator. That's not to say there isn't value in pursuing it, but to pretend like it's going to turn things around, I don't think I buy into that, but I want to get your guys' thoughts.
I think that making beautiful things and quality things, and if you're an artist, instead of trying to fit into, you know, the artist community, like make something that people can't ignore. You know, like if you're a musician, like make music that people can't ignore. You know, and if you're writing, and it doesn't, and it's not necessarily like a selling it as a conservative thing. It's just make something that people can't ignore. And
Right.
that's how you change, not necessarily change the culture, because you're right, the culture stinks. But like taking something and just writing your own rules. Like I love the example. This is kind of a weird example, but like I love Dita Von Teese. Like she was a stripper, and she took burlesque and made it something, and now everybody talks about burlesque because she just made her own rules, like in pop culture. You know, when she was just who she was, and she wasn't like afraid to be who she was. And so I think that's the only way that you're not going to take back pop culture, because if you try to take back pop culture, then you end up with these like, it's like these Christian bands that are so crappy, and they're trying to be like, oh, you like, when I was like in 6th grade, like they were like, you know, they're like talking about Christian bands, and they're like, oh, if you like U2, then you'll like this band, you know? And it's like, I don't want the Designer Imposter version, you know, like I just want something that's good. I just want something that makes me think. I just want something that makes me things, you know.
This is
Mark brings up a good point in the live chat. Like, art of the moment is transitory; it never lasts. Like, I think that's the issue though with pop culture. You talk about make something people can't ignore. Well, there's two ways to do that. One is to make something that's really, really good and high quality. The other way to do that is clickbait. Yeah. And that's my concern. And when we push for pop culture and drive for pop culture, do we do it? Which I think what you're getting at is, do we make the thing that's really good, the thing that is just so astounding that even people who disagree with us look at it and say, this is good?
Right.
Or do we just make the clickbait that, you know, appeals to whatever sentiment is popular at the time? Because if you appeal to whatever sentiment is popular at the time, you're always going to, that's where I say it's a race to the bottom, because human nature is such that we reject quality, we reject good and virtuous things in exchange for.
I feel like that's kind of, I feel like you see that a lot in conservative media. I don't want to like, I'm not going to drag anybody or anything, but like, you have people who have actual thoughts, who know things about like political philosophy, who have like, you know, all kinds of, you know, ideas, and they think. And then you have the people that just spit out whatever kind of provocative crap they can think of, and they don't even care if it's
you, Milo Yiannopoulos.
They don't even
we just subtweeted him.
They might not even believe it. They might not even believe it. They're just like, you know, and oh well, yeah, of course they don't care if you criticize them, because they don't even believe it themselves, or they don't even care. They didn't put any thought into it, but it gets a bunch of clicks, you know, for a little bit.
And I think you see that a lot with this last election, both on the Never Trump side and like the Uber Trump side. It's, you know, each side made a calculated bet on where they could make the most money.
Oh yeah.
Right. And with the least amount of effort, and then they just did it. And then it didn't matter if they were contradicting things that they said 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago.
And then Jen Rubin lost her mind. So like, you know,
right.
You know, and she did.
She went pretty nuts. I was gonna say I won't say she went completely Joy Reid on us, but but
who are we talking about?
Joy Reid, I was saying.
Jen Rubin I used to read her when she wrote at Commentary, and I just loved her. And so after, just in the last, like, I don't know, 5-6 years, I'm just kind of sad. I'm sad to see her go.
And I will say that when it comes to pop culture, I think what's more important, I think that this is something that I think we need to take a page out of the left's book. The left oftentimes is actually, while yes, they do make a lot of things that are preachy too, their most success, I think, is in things that are They're not
Subtle.
preaching. They don't even have a message per se. The values that they want to express are just the underlying framework of the thing they wrote, and that's how.
That's a great point. That there's a, so when you get a chance, Google "Oh Johnny Ringo No." That it'll bring up an article, and actually I'll post the link in the live chat in a second here. But it's about this conservative author Johnny Ringo, who writes some really disturbing shit. But the article is fascinating because the author premises there's two. We see this in literature. There's two ways to talk about values, and what's interesting is leftist writers tend to write about their values in a way where they're just natural, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody who is successful in the story, the good guys in the story, they're successful because they follow the leftist values, right? Whereas you read like the Vince Flynn books or the Brad Thor books, it's a little more like rah rah Reagan, like in your face. Yeah. It's not preachy. I mean, Brad Thor's a good writer. Vince Flynn's a good writer. Like they're good dramatic writers.
It's on the nose.
But it's very on the nose. And libertarian and conservative writers do that, where they write about values, but the values, it's almost like jamming them down your throat. Whereas the leftist is more. So this is actually one of the things I want to do as a writer.
But a good
Atlas Shrugged is a great example of that.
But a good example of doing it right is Lord of the Rings. All the underlying philosophy is there. It's using an underlying Christian philosophy, yet it's not Christian per se. It's
right. Orson Scott Card's another great author. He I don't know if I think he kind of defies labels. He doesn't like them, but he has a lot of views that are considered conservative, and the left certainly hates his guts. You read his books. When you read his Ender's Game series, when you read his Empire series, and anything I've ever read by him, I love. And he does this. He does not jam things down your throat. The dialogue that occurs, the good actions that occur, happen as people struggle with these values that we would say, okay, no, these are good values. These are conservative values, and the rest. And what really makes him super writer too is he doesn't just like make people successful by following them. He actually makes people struggle with them. And some of his most endearing characters are people who fall short of these ideals that conservatives have, and then they work towards redemption. So.
Yeah, well, and then you were talking about Tolkien, and Tolkien actually, one of the things that he despised, he actually gotten, because he was part of the Inklings with C.S. Lewis, and he despised the direct allegory of Lewis's Narnia series.
Yeah.
And the thing about, I think the thing that makes Lord of the Rings so much more successful than Chronicles of Narnia is the fact that you have to look really to find anything that would like be like, oh, this character's the Jesus character or this whatever, because it's dispersed. And then he also was heavily influenced by Norse mythology, and Norse mythology, like as we know it, is post-Christian. So there's actually, I mean, Odin was the inspiration for Gandalf, and Odin was like the main god. He hung on a tree for 9 days and went down into the realms to like gain wisdom, and he died basically, and so It's like post-Christian, but at the same time, like you have like this you just have like this underlying, like you were saying, like this underlying Christian philosophy, or even just a moral philosophy, and it's not like beating you over the head, And
I'm sorry, I had to get out the one thing that I remembered, that I'm still always amazed that every Mormon I know has read something from Orson Scott Card, yet the one thing no Mormon I know has ever read is the one series of books that's literally a sci-fi adaptation of the Book of Mormon.
I read it, the Homecoming.
You did
actually? Yeah, I remember reading it because I read Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game series first, and then and he's my favorite. He's my all-time favorite author. Like he is the reason I want to be an author, like a novelist. And so I love his. And, you know, anytime I find something on the shelves that's written by him, I just yank it off the shelf and buy it.
And you're the only
and
one.
and then I devour it. And I like. And so I think I read it. I read it like shortly after my mission. I found the Homeward Bound series, and I'm reading through it, and I'm like, "Oh, the sci-fi series. This is by Orson Scott Card. Great, I'm gonna love this." And I start reading through it, and I'm like, "Wait a minute,
this all sounds familiar.
This is very familiar." And yeah, it's the Book of Mormon in space.
Leave it to me to do it the exact opposite way.
He came to BYU while I was in college, and he gave a little fireside chat, and he talks about that. And he's like, "Yeah, guys, I basically ripped off the Book of Mormon."
Yeah, he said it. The irony is, I read it the other way around because I had never read the Book of Mormon. I read I read the Homecoming books, and I read them for years, like to the point that I practically memorized them. And then I read the Book of Mormon later, and I was like, why does this all sound familiar? I was like, I know this story. And I was like, holy crap. And I looked up, and I was like, oh, he took it off the Book of Mormon. I was like, oh, I see. Okay. I was like, so I did it the other way around, quite literally.
That's funny.
Anyway, I was just saying, but yeah, that was just something I always noticed, that Mike then is the only Mormon I know who's ever read those books. Because
you know, it's funny though. I was actually turned to Orson Scott Card by people who are not Mormon.
Is he though?
So,
I don't know if he is.
Yeah, he served his mission in Brazil.
Yes, he's a rare breed. He's a Mormon Democrat, which you like never find.
But I haven't read any Orson Scott Card, but I do know that he's a brown coat. So I don't know if you guys are like Firefly fans, but
I love Firefly. It's such a good series.
Yeah.
I have to watch it. I've seen Serenity, but I haven't watched Firefly.
Right, so I just posted the John Ringo No book review in the live chat. I'll tweet it out just for it's very entertaining read.
Awesome.
So now you have a blog, correct,
yeah.
April? Okay. Where can people read your musings on art and poetry and other things?
The thing is that I just switched over to Medium, and so I switched all my stuff to Medium, and I put the address in my profile on Twitter, but it's like these big long, it's like medium.com/blah blah blah blah, and then like the Hyacinth Girl. And
but if they follow you on Twitter, they can go to your bio.
They can find it because I have that. See, now that was just so short-sighted of me. I shouldn't have just everything over. But I like the Medium the Medium format. Like it looks really nice and professional. But yeah, so go to Twitter and you'll find it.
At Hyacinth Girl.
You are
her tag is in the bio description. In the description. Thank God. Yeah, we're running out of time, so my brain's just going. So make sure you guys are following April. She is funny. She's smart. She's eye candy too. So bonus. I swear a lot. I'm sorry. So do I.
Yeah,
I'm a salty woman. I don't think our audience has a problem with swear words, to be honest.
My dad.
No, just my mom. Just my mom.
She's done. Yeah, well. We'll get her. Well, sorry, Mom. She's absolutely one of my favorite follows. So make sure you're following her. She has some great insights, great stories, great conversations.
I also stupid crap. So it's like a nice mix. Talk about shoes and makeup and Kardashians, and I'm like Kanye. Like we can talk about that. And then we can talk about books and
she's a regular Renaissance woman, guys. It's a rare find.
Hey,
so
it's also a weird year. Kim Kardashian said something intelligent this year. So
she did. She did.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
I'm
going to look for the second
weird year.
I think there's 2 examples.
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm like every time something happens now in politics, I'm like looking to the east. I'm like, okay, Jesus, are you coming yet?
I thought that I might go there trumpets in the east or something.
I'm sure I heard one.
All right. Well, thanks again, April, for coming on the show. This was a real fun conversation. This is a topic that we could talk hours and hours and hours for. So we'll definitely have you back on, because I would love to talk books and art and other fun, pretty things with you.
Talk. So, you know.
Oh yeah, no, we will too. So it works out because it gives us stuff to talk about for the show. So make sure you guys are following April. Make sure you're following John at Kamui Hideyoku. I already put it in the live chat, so I don't have to spell it. Make sure you're following us at ornery_opinions, where I will be continuing to write threads and shitpost libs and having fun, and maybe even talking about art every now and then. So thanks again for watching the show, guys. Make sure you share this, subscribe if you haven't already, and you guys have an excellent weekend. And go to the library and read a book, or I don't know. Go to an art museum and look at something pretty. All right. You guys have a good night.